so elegant. Such a tiny footprint, fitting into the tiniest spaces. So hot, with such an itty-bitty waist.
Hello everybody, I'm Justin. This is my home, a compact 21-foot RV. When I bought this RV, I specifically wanted a floor plan that could accommodate the Kimberly stove, and I had this in my mind before I made the purchase. And this RV originally had 2 sofa beds, one right across from the other. And I did some measurements, and I knew if I ripped out the sofa bed on this side, I would have room to build a nice little hearth for the Kimberly stove, and a workstation for a little seat and my laptop, and a place to store firewood. And it worked out beautifully. This stove is my pride and joy. It was the most important item for me to purchase before anything else. Now, I'm all about getting off the grid as much as possible, and the stove was my first priority. Before LED lights, before solar panels, before anything else, the stove. Here's why. If you're going to go off grid, the wood stove can heat, it can cook, it can even generate electricity. There are multitudes of thermoelectric generators on the market, which you can place on the stove and charge your batteries. And you can even rig up hot water heaters off these stoves. And there's my kitty. Hey, Emmy. Say hi. That's my cat, Emmy. And she loves the stove too. She loves to sleep in front of it or on the bed right next to it. Now, one of the biggest advantages to this stove is that it's a dual combustion. So there's a secondary combustion up here with the regular combustion down here. The fire you see is actually not what produces most of the heat. It's the second fire that happens up top that really cranks out the heat. The cooktop surface easily exceeds over 500 degrees Celsius. In fact, I'd say it probably went up to about 600. My thermometer, which I use, would spin right around, right to the bottom here. So I can't even tell exactly how hot it was. But man, you can cook some good meals on this baby. But the stovepipe, the flue chimney, no problems at all. Keeps nice and cool on the sides. The sides of the stove, you can get within a couple of inches before feeling any heat at all, and it's not that hot off the sides. All of the heat comes off the top and off the glass, the window in the front. The install took no more than a couple hours, and all my long-term subscribers will remember in the video I showed that when we were building this hearth, the subfloor here, that we drilled a hole right through the floor of the motorhome and installed a plastic pipe which goes right down below, and that feeds the stove oxygen. The Kimberly stove does not use your inside oxygen when operating. Now, it can, but it's equipped with an air breather underneath, so that it makes it a lot safer, and it makes it run awesome. When I actually open the stove and I put my hand inside, I can feel the cold air coming in from underneath the vehicle. When you close the door, it's sealed, but it still has fresh air coming in from underneath, and that's what feeds the fire. Unlike most wood stoves where you have to leave the door open while you light it to get it going and then shut the door, but at the same time you have to leave a window open or something like that, or you might run out of oxygen. So it's something you don't really have to worry about with this stove. It's fantastic for a small space, for motorhomes, RVs, any kind of tiny home. And that's really who this stove manufacturer markets to. It's to tiny homes and boats and RVs and you name it. Oh, there goes Kitty down her kitty hallway. Yes, that is actually a kitty hallway, and it goes all the way down to under there, under the wood box, and there's another hole in the floor which takes her down to the basement storage, and that's her litter box room. So she's going down to the bathroom right now. Let's talk a little bit about the stove and how easy it is to operate and how self-gratifying it is, to be honest. This is the centerpiece for my motorhome. I think it's more important than the woodwork I've done in here, than the surround sound system, than the TV, the lighting, you name it. The stove is the centerpiece, and that's exactly how I wanted it to be. So to light the Kimberly, I usually use regular little fire starters. You can buy these in all sorts of different shapes and sizes and forms, but they're available anywhere. I just picked these up at Canadian Tire. Alright, I usually just put that down in the center. Okay, then I grab some kindling. And I have these nice little wood boxes here, usually full of kindling. And now I'll build a little teepee in there. Now, I don't usually use paper. It's not recommended to use much paper in stoves like this. And I found I don't need any paper, to be honest. Just light the fire starter. Now, at this point, you actually can just shut the door, unlike other wood stoves. So let's go ahead and do that. You'll see the fire won't go out, and in fact, it'll start going real good in just a few seconds here. Alright, here she goes. The kindling is catching nicely. And now, let's talk a little bit about clearances, and one of the reasons why this is so great for tiny homes. Now, you only need about 15 centimeters of clearance on the sides. That's about 6 inches. And as you can see, even including the T-connector on the back and the pipe, I've got more than I need right here. Up there as well. It doesn't get that warm at all on the sides. Now, with most stoves, even small stoves like the cubic mini wood stove and things like that, you need more clearance than that, officially. Now, you can get away with even less clearance than this if you put up, heat shields around the stove. But most of the heat from the Kimberly comes off the glass in the front or off the top, the cooktop, which can easily reach, again, 600 degrees Celsius or higher. So the sides, not so much. The sides, in fact, you can get your hand right next to it and just barely feel a little bit of heat once it's really roaring. It's really just off the front and the top. So it's perfect for a small space like this. It's not dangerous at all. And it's just like, there's nothing better than lying in bed with your feet right next to a wood stove watching movies in the middle of winter. Now, I'm in Vancouver, in BC, and it doesn't really get that cold here. In fact, we almost never go below freezing. But I could see myself being very comfortable in here, even if I was back east in like Saskatchewan or Manitoba or Ontario or something where it gets really cold. This would be a lifesaver. Once this kindling starts to burn down and it becomes hot coals, that's when I plop one of these awesome Presta logs on top. I choose to use Presta logs just because they're dirt cheap, about $1 a log, and they're readily available in the areas where I park. But you can use all sorts of wood. Of course, you should always use dry wood. You should never put, moist wood in there. You shouldn't just go cut stuff off trees and throw it in here. I mean, it is a wood stove, so there's a huge variety of fuels you can put into it. But again, try to use proper stuff and dry wood. Presta logs are fantastic and sanctioned by the company themselves. So I found them, I tried them, I love them. Oh yeah, that's looking good. Now, one thing you're going to notice is the glass will start to darken once it starts to warm up, as happens with most wood stoves that have a glass window. This is normal. The Presta logs are a little bit too long to put in as one piece into the Kimberly stove. I usually just go outside and break them in half on a curb. I also have a little saw and a little axe. I never use those. Sometimes if I'm cutting other wood outside or whatever, it's nice to have them. But in my situation, being in the city and being that these are readily available, it's not really necessary. I just go outside and break them in half or into usually one big chunk and one smaller chunk sometimes as well. Okay, I just broke one of them in half for purposes of this video. Now, at this point, there is some smoke coming out the roof cap, which is totally normal as it warms up. But as again I've shown in videos before, after about 15-20 minutes, once it gets going real well, there will be literally zero smoke outside. Nobody knows you have a fire going. Alright, you'll notice the glass is starting to get a little darker now. Okay, Got some hot coals and we got some good flames going on in the bottom of the stove, so I am going to pop in a half Presta log. Okay, there we go. Okay, it's been a few minutes and now you can see that the glass is almost completely black. And this is quite normal. Sometimes you won't be able to tell there's any flame at all. It'll be completely blackened over. And this is to be expected. Alright, now you can see the black is starting to cook off the glass. And this is quite normal. It'll eventually burn completely clean again. A few minutes later, and she's starting to burn clean. At this point, I usually turn down the damper to about half. And watch a little TV.
Howdy!
Alright, now she's really going nice. Look at that. At this point, I usually turn it down to, it's about 15-20% open, so it's almost closed. Just about there. And let's take a look what's going on up top. There's that secondary combustion going. Isn't that a thing of beauty? It's just roaring. So the top of the stove right now, it's getting really, really hot. Hot enough to cook anything you want, pretty much. I still have yet to buy a nice big wok to make some nice stir fries on here. But I use the frying pan quite a bit. I make steaks and I cook up pastas, you name it. I have to be careful not to melt my camera lens here. It gets really, really hot in front of the glass. It's beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. I love watching the flames at this point. Isn't that cool? I could just stare at that all day. Like, this is better than watching TV. Does the cat ever jump up there? No, she doesn't. Most cats have a good sense of where not to jump, and that's one of them. She's never even looked up there. She doesn't even think twice about it. She hops up on the logs and then hops up to the shelf up there, but she never, ever, ever jumps on the stove. If she ever did, she'd only do it once, but thankfully she's never even thought of it. I see her all the time jumping up the sides to get up to the shelf. But even when the stove is off, in the middle of the day, doesn't matter. She will not hop on top of the stove. So, cats are very, very smart that way. Hey? Yeah, she would never do that. But you love this, don't you? You just love this fireplace. What a life you got. How long will this last? Well, it can last a couple of hours on half a Presta log. It really depends on what kind of wood you're using, of course. What I've noticed is when I turn it down, when I turn down the damper to even to there or so, this can continue burning for a couple of hours easily. If I put in a bigger piece, it'll go even longer. And yes, I can get a good night's sleep, wake up in the morning, and there's still heat coming off of it and still hot coals in the bottom. Which means I can literally wake up, make my coffee, and throw another log on the coals, and it gets going again. It's very hard to find a small wood stove that can do that. Look at this. Look at the approval from this cat. Obviously, it's pretty awesome. Hey? Yeah, so happy. Kitties love their heat. I swear I'm like a human cat. Even though it's not that cold in this area of the world, I still love my heat. Some people say it's excessive. I've had a lot of people come in here thinking it's hot, but I like it like that. I like it warm and toasty. And you can just open a window if it's too hot. No big deal. I save a lot of money on propane. Definitely. There's no doubt about it. This stove will pay for itself. When it comes to cost, yes, they're fairly expensive, but compared to a good wood stove for residential applications, not really. And the fact that it will pay for itself over and over, and the fact that you're completely off grid, and if anything happens or you had to bug out, you've got heating, you've got cooking, you've got a way to make hot water, generate electricity. I mean, all in one. You can't beat that. And that's why I think this is more important than even solar panels. So, for an off-grid solution, nothing beats a good wood stove, in my opinion. Now, as far as maintenance goes, it's really not much different than any other wood stove. Once in a while, you're going to want to clean the flue pipe out, obviously. But this stove produces very little creosote in the pipe and very little ash because it burns so efficiently and it cleans everything up. That secondary combustion up top, really, it burns everything. It burns all the bad stuff. So it's pretty clean what comes out the top. And the little ash store on the bottom, that little guy, I'll show you. Tiny little bit of ash in there from 2 days of burning. Like, it's nothing. And it's so easy to clean and so satisfying to know that you're creating your own heat, your own ability to cook, and even generate power if you have a thermoelectric generator. That, it's, to me, it's worth every penny. And if I bought another motorhome, I would absolutely, without a doubt, if it was a Class B plus, Class C, something this size or bigger, I would definitely get another Kimberly wood stove and do it all over again. And I'm not being paid anything by Kimberly. I bought this stove with my own hard-earned money. And I just think, I can't say it enough, guys. It's probably the best investment I ever made. There are people out there that will easily spend $5, $6, $7, $8, $10,000 on solar panels and batteries and things like that. But this simple device, it to me, it's just so much more practical and so much more foolproof and so much more usable in a situation where you had to be off the grid. That I would easily spend $5,000 or $10,000 on something like this. Solar system, I mean, guys, I spent maybe $300 on my solar panel, and that's all I need for solar. This definitely was a priority, and it takes precedence over all the other things that I have in here. That being said, I'm still going to do a lot more upgrades on my motorhome in other areas, such as my new solar system. I am planning on doing a thermoelectric generator on this, not so much because I need it, because I really don't, but I'm a curious guy. I like stuff like that, and I want to do a review of it and all that, so look forward to that this year, guys, for sure. As far as the hot water goes, it's not necessary for me because I use hot water once a day. I just push the button on the panel in the back of the motorhome, and my hot water fires up, and 10 minutes later I have a shower. And then I turn it off for the rest of the day. I don't need hot water the rest of the day. And it uses so little propane that it's not a big deal for me. Of course, if you really want to be off-grid though, and you don't have access to propane, and you really want hot water without having to put a pot on the top of the wood stove to boil your hot water, there are ways to do it. For sure, absolutely there is. But think about this. In the wintertime, when you're using your stove more often, day and night, you can be charging your batteries while you're heating your place, while you're cooking your dinner, while you're making your hot water. All right? During the day, the solar does the job. At night, the stove does the job. And in the winter, it would be all day and night with your stove. So it's just so practical, and it's such a, sometimes, like, as you guys know, I'm a fan of tech, but not when it's too high tech and it takes over our lives and we don't have control anymore. This gives you back that human control. And there's no software or circuit boards to fail. You know what I mean? It will always work for you. And when everything else fails, when the solar panels fail or the batteries need to be replaced or you know, what have you, this will still be here for you. And you can still feel comfort in that, in knowing that you've got your heat and you can cook your dinner. So, I mean, that to me is priceless. Yeah, you can get cheaper wood stoves out there, but they're going to weigh a lot. This guy is only 56 pounds. I mean, it weighs less than the steel frame sofa bed that I took out to build this for it and to put this in. Like, this actually weighs less than what was here before, even with the wood in here. The old sofa bed was steel framed and it was all storage underneath. So, you know, naturally people use that area to put all sorts of stuff for storage. It was definitely over 56 pounds. So, I mean, one person can easily lift this and move this out. It's very portable. The fact it uses outside oxygen from underneath the vehicle, another bonus. It's sealed. It's not using inside air. There's a lot of cheaper wood stoves where it's going to eat up your inside oxygen. It is very efficient. It will burn all night, or at least give you heat all night, and then you can start it up right in the morning because there's still hot coals in the morning. That's pretty impressive for something this size, which is pretty small. It uses a 3-inch pipe, not a 6-inch pipe. So it's a pellet stove pipe, and it has very small clearances. So, I mean, it's so perfect for something this size. I think these would be installed in a lot more motorhomes if the market was geared towards people wanting to be off-grid. We know the average RV out there is not geared for that. It's geared for people, you know, the retired couples that just want to drive their RV to the trailer park and plug it in. It's a real feeling of independence having this stove, and I wouldn't trade it for anything else. And, you know, more importantly than anything else, Emmy approves. She loves the stove. Yeah, you love it, don't you? Oh. A warm kitty is a happy kitty. Keep on rocking in the free world, everyone. Yeah.